You now know how to navigate through a project and make basic changes to the controls on your pages. Using the Toolbox, you can add controls to your pages by simply dragging and dropping them. To begin this lesson, open the My Project sample file from your Sample Files folder. Now open the HTML code of mypage.aspx and switch to Design View. You learned about Design View in Lesson 1.10. Now you're going to expand the Toolbox. To do this, click the Toolbox icon in the top left corner of the screen. The Toolbox window appears. Next, click the Auto Hide icon in the top right corner of the toolbox to pin it to the window. This will stop the toolbox from overlapping your page and will stop it from disappearing automatically. You may have noticed that the Solution Explorer, Properties window and Toolbox all have the same pin icon in the top right corner of their windows. This button switches on and off Auto Hide. When Auto Hide is switched on, the window will automatically minimize away from the screen when it is not in use. By auto-hiding your windows, you can get a large unobstructed view of the main window. Feel free to experiment with auto-hide. Remember that you can always reset your window layout to the default by clicking Window, Reset Window Layout. Next, expand the Standard category in the toolbox if it isn't already expanded. This is done in the same way as in the Solution Explorer. Click the arrow icon next to the Standard category unless it is already expanded. The Standard category contains the most commonly used controls. Next, you're going to add a button control to the page. To do this, simply click and drag a button control from the toolbox onto your page. Place it below the text that you added earlier. A button is created called Button 1. Now switch to Source View. Here you can see the code that was added to display the new button control. Next, you're going to add a text box control without leaving Source View. In the same way as you did with the button control, drag a text box control from the toolbox onto the page's code. Try to drop the text box just before the line that contains the button. Some code is added to the page for your new text box control. If you're familiar with HTML, you have probably noticed that the objects that begin with ASP are unfamiliar. This is because they are ASP.NET controls. As you've heard in earlier lessons, HTML is a language that web browsers understand. However, these ASP lines aren't valid HTML code, so a web browser could not understand them. When an ASPX web page is requested by a web browser, ASP.NET controls are converted into valid HTML code. When an ASPX web page is requested by a web browser, ASP.NET controls are converted into valid HTML code by the web server before they are sent to the browser. You will learn more about this in Lesson 3.1. Switch back to Design View now, and you can see that the text box control that you added has been inserted before the button. Next, you're going to add a standard HTML control. To do this, first collapse the standard category in the toolbox. Now expand the HTML category and drag an input reset control onto the page just after the button. Finally, you're going to add a calendar control. You'll find the calendar control in the standard category of the toolbox. In the same way as you added the other controls, drag a calendar control onto the page. Try to place it before your text box. Close Visual Studio now, saving your changes if prompted. You've now completed Lesson 115. Add controls to a page with the toolbox.